literally frozen. And it was actually the nightmare scenario that we all read about in schools, and you hope you never live it, but it was a crisis of confidence. And that put everybody in financial services in a different situation. Us as money managers, it was a very challenging time, there's no question, but winners and losers were created during this period. And what's a simple model? I mean, what does a money manager do? Your level of revenue is determined by the level of assets under management. So a simple example, if equity markets drop 45%, your revenues are down that at least. We're fiduciaries, which means we can't reallocate costs as some other organizations can. We manage money for all of you. You can't fire the portfolio managers. It just is something, it's just not an option. And so during that crisis, it was something that we were running a good business. We were able to, we came out of it stronger. We were in a position that we could spend time with our clients. And the outcome of it was that we have deeper, stronger relationships with our clients. We were strong financially. So as organizations were less strong coming out of it or changing their business models, we were able to take advantage of it. Morgan Stanley chose to sell what they call their retail asset management business. It's $115 billion and about $1.5 billion, which was a large purchase for us. AIG, everybody knows the AIG story during that period. They are very, very strong in Asia. We just bought their Asian real estate business, direct real estate business. We bought a business in Australia also. So it was really during this crisis that the message being lessons learned, run a good business, don't lose. All that matters are your clients, and if you are in that position, you will be able to take advantage of situations for the benefit of your clients, again, coming out of it. So those were the lessons we learned through it.
Duncan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, let me start by saying, since Harvey was going down the list and said none of the four gentlemen to my left got their job through a lottery, I want to be very clear, I didn't either. We had a board, and they decided to go through the same process. I just wanted to make sure people don't think I fell into this. Although given that the crisis started shortly after I got my job, people did ask me to let them know the next time I was thinking about changing jobs. So I'll add you guys all to the list. If I think about changing jobs again, I'll let you know. So we have an interesting history as a company as well. Our roots go all the way back to 1792. And if you count some of our European organizations that are part of our company, it actually goes back to the early 1600s. So we had a high school class in recently. We bring them in quite frequently to give them a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on. And I said to them, we started the same year that George Washington started his second term in office, and you could see them looking at each other going, is this guy nuts, or is what's he talking about? And I let them, whisper for a few seconds, and I said, yes, I mean that George Washington. And now, unlike Kevin, who I think did a very smart thing and built a company quickly and got to market, and he's right. I mean, he did it at a time when no one else was thinking you could do it. So I think we'll get to that later in the panel. It can be done in all markets, and it's actually, and it does give you the opportunity to really create jobs and grow your company. We took a slightly slower approach to going public. We waited 214 years to go public after our founding in 1792. So the company, which was still very U.S.-centric in 2006, finally does an IPO at that time. Shortly thereafter, announces a merger with a French-based company called Euronext. My predecessor leaves somewhat unexpectedly, 6 months after I had joined the company. So the board invites me in December of 2007 and says, here's we'd like you to be the CEO. And so I'm in the job for about a couple of months, and March of 2008, everything really starts to go crazy. I've never been a CEO before. Had a lot of good teachers, including some who were on this panel, who you can kind of look to for guidance about how to be a CEO. But you're 3 months into the mission, and the three things you've learned so far is that we're in the crisis of all crises. The company is not really well positioned in a whole host of things because it doesn't really know what it means to be a public company. And the joke I tell is that one of the first things I did was Google the keywords successful U.S.-French business combinations, and Google came back to me after working really hard to try to find some feedback, it comes back, and the best they could come up with was, "Did you mean unsuccessful U.S.-French business combinations?" So here I am. I'm a rookie CEO. The bottom's dropping out of the market. There are literally no IPOs. No one thinks we can get this merger done with the French. And we instead decided to use it as a massive opportunity, like a lot of the other folks on the panel have said, because it occurred to me one evening that I could not have come up with a better externality if I had dreamed one up. And while it was unfortunate that it was this severe a crisis, with all the work we had to do, I thought we could turn it into an opportunity to change the culture more quickly. We had a chance to hire people that in a normal environment we never would have had a chance to hire, right? The fact that we were out there even trying to hire, and the story was we're transforming an icon whose history goes back to the founding of the country. You know, you're working at another financial institution. It's not going to be fun or interesting, and if it's going to be transformational, it's not going to be fun or interesting to do that either. You should come over and work with us. So we were able to bring in people that were just terrific that we normally couldn't have gotten. We changed the technology faster. We righted the ship faster. We dealt with the culture faster. We sat down and we said, everyone thinks we're not going to be able to put these two companies together. Why don't we just prove everyone else wrong? And the people, I think, really, really rallied around it. So we were absolutely able to come out of it better than we went into it. We invested in businesses while we did that. We did 6 acquisitions during the crisis, if people want to use, depending on where you want to bookend it, if you would say that it's over. 5 of them were not exchanges. They were technology assets. So we slowly but surely were doing things that nobody else was doing, and we didn't want any attention. We didn't care if anybody noticed. We just kind of systematically went about the business. And now we go into 2011, truly international, having announced a merger that we think is a game changer in our industry, very diversified across asset classes, geographies, et cetera. And these folks are among the community that we are so proud of, because here's a little tidbit for you. The 4,500 companies that are listed on our exchanges around the world, if you added up their market caps, they would be the largest country in the world. So their collective market cap is bigger than the GDP of any country in the world, of the 4,500 companies that are listed with us. That's an asset, and we have to be a terrific service provider to keep them in the community, but that's an asset that we don't think anybody else has. And we made that community stronger during the crisis. We got closer to our clients during the crisis, and now we think we're poised to really be, a company like no other in our industry, which was really our ambition when we got into the seat a little less than 4 years ago.
Okay, let's see if I can use a little bit of poetic license to summarize what I just heard. There's nothing like adversity to drive the people in a company together, to understand what the new mission has to be, and unite against all foes. And it's a major, major driving force on what something like that can do. And we went through a long period of time in the United States where it happened, a company here, a company there, an industry here, but never an economy-wide thing. And the lesson I take away from this is that all the survivors are going to be that much stronger, i.e. the U.S. economy going forward is going to be so much more strong because of this. Now, having said that, let's kind of get to the next question.
Can I give you one soundbite?
Yeah, go ahead, please do.
To prove how right you are, and Harvey probably knows this. I've used this in other speeches I've given. Of the 30 stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average now, which, these are the household names. You would all know every single one of them. 18 of them started in an economic downturn, recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. 18 of the 30 started at one of the worst times you could think of starting a company if you look back at history, and 60% of those companies started in a downturn like we just lived through. So adversity is indeed, that mother of invention, if you want to call it that.
And the actions that each company took, nobody needed a regulator to tell them they had to run a stress test and plan for worst-case scenarios. They figured it out on their own.
Yeah.
And the unregulated or the less regulated oftentimes get it before the regulated do. Okay, I'm going to add that as another measure. Don't forget, I work for a regulator.
We love you, Harvey.
But my libertarian principles are coming out. Okay. So having said all that, let's kind of jump to the next question. You've all talked about the external environment of the financial crisis. Let's forget about the financial crisis for a second, to the extent that you can. You've survived it. But the external environment has all kinds of challenges for you. Success for a business is half driven from within. Can you cut costs? Can you hire and retain good people? Those sorts of things. That's half of success. The other half of success is dealing with the external environment. And those that do it better than their competitors are the ones that grow and thrive, and the other ones go by the wayside. So what I'm going to ask each of you to do is look at the 2 or 3 biggest external environment challenges you think your firm faces. And I'm looking for commonalities here because I don't know what your answers are going to be, and how you are addressing those issues. I know you know how to address adversity. So, Mike, what are the 2 or 3 most important external environmental challenges that JCPenney faces?
Well, one might be very surprising, and I'm not sure anybody's really noticed, but apparel has been deflationary for 20 years. Literally, other than semiconductors, I can't think of another category that consistently gets less expensive for the consumer. And the reason that happened is essentially production kept moving to lower and lower labor cost markets. So the external environment we currently find ourselves in, for the first time in 20 years, we face the prospect of, because of cotton, particularly cotton prices and petroleum-based product prices, we're going to see 5 to 20% cost increases on things that we're selling to the American consumer at a time where Harvey will tell you that the wage growth is not there, and the family budget is being balanced against high commodity prices in fuel and food, and apparel is only one of the things that they're dealing with. Now, the good news is that all of us have to deal with it at the same time. The bad news is there's not a lot of nudity in the United States. So, frankly, nobody needs to buy apparel, right? And particularly the customers that don't have a lot extra slack in their budget. So I would say that's one big external factor we deal with. The second big external factor we deal with is the plight of our American family, because I am dealing with people that have a job but are at risk, feel that they're at risk of not having it, or they know someone who doesn't have a job. That the sentiment of my consumer, which is externally created, is a risk that we face. Our competitors face the same risk. Having said that, there's no barrier to entry to our business. So anybody can open a shop and sell one of the things we're selling in our store with literally no barrier to entry. It doesn't take a lot of technology. It doesn't take a lot of extra smarts. Just basically open the door and start to charge less than I do, and our business goes down. So a very, very competitive marketplace. If you want to see how competitive it is, look at the fast fashion retailers: Zara, Mango, Uniqlo, Forever 21, H&M. $60 billion worth of business is going to be taken out of department stores from a business that didn't exist 8 years ago. So unless you're pretty agile to compete with these kind of businesses, that's an external factor that you can't control. The third are the costs of health care. Quite honestly, health care, we have 150,000 associates. We feel a responsibility to help take care of the things they face as risks. But the unknown, which essentially I'm going to characterize healthcare and unknown in the same sentence, because we really don't know what the impact is going to be. I'm on the Starbucks board. Starbucks has provided healthcare for part-time employees. They don't know what that means for them. So I think that's an unknown that's externally, politically, and in every other way central to people's sentiment and their own personal condition as well as the company's condition.
Thank you, Mike. David?
See if this one works now. Yeah, it works now. Works now? Okay, good. I think, when you look at the external challenges for us, I mean, they can be put in a couple of buckets. One is the geopolitical aspects of what's going around the world right now. We've been as high as 60% of our business coming out of the Middle East. So you can see where a little bit of political strife creates a challenge for us, and who are we going to be and what are we going to do. Fortunately, our business is a little like squeezing a balloon. If the capital is not going to be spent in the Middle East, it's going to be spent someplace else for energy development and infrastructure and those kinds of things. So the capital flows will go where they need to go. But that political unrest, I think, is something that we have absolutely no control over, but something that we stay as close to as we can so that we can predict, okay, what happens if. We do a lot of scenario planning around that. I think the whole aspect of transparency and the fight against corruption, I think, is prevalent. It's something I'm very involved in and have a passion for, and that goes hand in hand with free markets. When you look at the U.S., we have regulations and laws that I think are very good. When you think about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act as an example,